Listen, I need you to hear something important before we go any further. What I'm about to share with you, it took me 75 years to understand, and I promise you, whether you pray 5 times a day or you've never stepped foot in a church, this matters to you. So please just stay with me for a few minutes. Don't skip ahead. The room is dim here, just the soft glow from this old lamp beside me, casting shadows on my wrinkled hands as they tremble slightly on the armrest. My voice might crack a bit. Age does that, but listen close. My name is Russell. I'm 75 years old now, sitting in this worn leather chair that creaks with every shift of my weight. The air smells faintly of dust and the faint remnants of my evening tea cooling on the table. I've spent my entire life wrestling with one question that I think every single person asks themselves at some point. What do I actually believe? It's not a question that comes with fanfare or a clear signpost. It sneaks up on you in the quiet hours when the world outside your window is still and your mind wanders back through the decades. You know, I grew up in a small town in the Midwest where the church steeple was the tallest thing on the horizon. Sunday mornings weren't optional. They were as routine as breathing. My father, a stern man with calloused hands from working the factory line, served as a deacon. He'd wake us before dawn, his voice gruff but steady, reciting psalms over breakfast. My mother, with her gentle eyes and flour-dusted aprons, taught Sunday school to a room full of fidgety kids, including me. I memorized Bible verses before I could properly tie my shoes. John 3:16, the Lord's Prayer, all etched into my young mind like carvings on a tree trunk. Back then, everything felt so solid, so unshakable. Faith was black and white, right there in the worn pages of our family Bible, dog-eared from years of use. Doubts, if they flickered, you pushed them down, didn't let them see the light of day. The community revolved around that little white church, with potlucks in the basement where the air was thick with the scent of casseroles and coffee, and everyone knew your name, your sins, your prayers. But here's what nobody tells you when you're young, sitting in those hard wooden pews, feeling the cool draft from the stained glass windows on your neck. Life doesn't care about your certainty. It doesn't pause to check if your beliefs are neatly aligned. It barrels forward, throwing curveballs that shatter the glass you've built around your world. And when I was 23, fresh out of community college and working my first real job at a hardware store, I watched my best friend, Tommy, die in a car accident. We grew up together, racing bikes down dirt roads, sharing secrets under the old oak tree in his backyard. He was a good man, better than me in so many ways, always the one to help a neighbor fix a fence without asking for pay, or slip a few dollars to the widow down the street. Kind, generous, with a laugh that could light up the darkest room. One rainy night, his car skidded off the highway, wrapping around a tree. Gone in an instant, the twisted metal still steaming in the downpour when I arrived at the scene, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. I remember standing at his funeral, the church packed with mourners, the air heavy with the smell of lilies and polished wood. The pastor spoke of God's mysterious plan, of Tommy being in a better place now, his voice echoing off the rafters. But for the first time, I didn't feel comforted. I felt a rage bubbling up, hot and unfamiliar, clenching my fists until my nails dug into my palms. Why him? Why like that? None of it made sense anymore. The verses I'd memorized felt hollow, like echoes in an empty room. That anger, it planted a seed in me, one that grew roots deep into my soul, twisting and turning over the years. That seed led me to a choice, one that defined the next half century of my life. I decided I couldn't just accept what I'd been handed. I had to seek my own answers, even if it meant stepping outside the familiar boundaries. I started questioning everything, Not the polite, surface-level queries from Sunday school where the responses were prepackaged and safe. No, these were raw, aching questions that kept me up at night, staring at the ceiling as the clock ticked relentlessly. What if the faith I grew up with wasn't the only path? What if there were other ways to make sense of this chaotic world? I dove into books, stacking them on my nightstand until the pile threatened to topple. The Bible, of course, but I didn't stop there. I read the Quran, its pages filled with poetic calls to prayer and mercy. Buddhist texts spoke of impermanence and suffering, resonating with the pain I'd felt at Tommy's grave. Hindu philosophies introduced me to cycles of life and karma, ideas that made me ponder the interconnectedness of it all. Even atheist writings, sharp and logical, challenging the very existence of a higher power. Each one offered a glimpse, a fragment of truth that shimmered like light through fractured glass. About 30 years ago, when I was in my 40s and working as a supervisor in an office downtown, I met a man named Ahmed. He was a devout Muslim immigrating from Egypt a few years prior. At first, I'll admit, I kept my distance. My upbringing had planted subtle prejudices, ideas about others and their beliefs, whispers from sermons I'd heard as a boy. But one evening we were stuck late on a deadline, the office empty except for the hum of fluorescent lights overhead and the distant rumble of traffic outside. The air was stale, tinged with the scent of cooling coffee from our mugs. We started talking, really talking, as the clock hands crept past 11. He shared about the 5 pillars of Islam, the declaration of faith, the daily prayers facing Mecca, the fasting during Ramadan that taught self-discipline, the almsgiving that fostered compassion, and the pilgrimage if one could afford it. His voice was calm, his eyes lighting up as he described submission to Allah, not as surrender, but as finding peace in something greater. Sitting there, my tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, I felt a jolt of recognition. He was articulating the same deep longing I experienced in my own prayers, the pull toward connection, toward humility in the face of the unknown. The words differed, the rituals varied, him prostrating on a prayer mat, me kneeling in a pew, but the essence identical. It was like hearing my own heart echoed in a different language. That conversation cracked open a door I'd kept shut, inviting me to explore without fear. But exploration came with a cost, one that seeped into my life slowly, like water eroding stone. I lost connections that once felt unbreakable. Old friends from church drifted away, their invitations to Bible study drying up when my questions grew too probing. Whispers followed me. Russell's lost his way, they'd say, their voices laced with pity or judgment. My marriage strained under the weight, my wife raised in the same rigid faith, worried about my soul, our late-night arguments leaving the bedroom air thick with unspoken fears. I'd wake to her quiet sobs, her hand clutching the cross necklace around her neck. Financially, it hit too. I turned down promotions that conflicted with my evolving views, choosing integrity over advancement, watching colleagues climb while I stayed put, my wallet thinner, my regrets heavier. Emotionally, though, that's where the real toll hid. Isolation crept in, a cold companion in the quiet evenings. I'd sit on the porch, the sunset painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges, feeling adrift in a sea of uncertainty. The certainty of my youth, that warm blanket of absolute truth, was gone, replaced by a vast, echoing void. I missed the simplicity, the community bonfires where faith bound us like glue. Instead, I carried a constant ache, a sense of loss for the man I used to be, uncomplicated and sure. My children noticed, their visits laced with awkward silences, unsure how to bridge the gap between the father they knew and this questioning stranger. Holidays became tense, the dinner table conversations skirting around beliefs like fragile glass. And in the mirror, I'd see lines etched deeper, eyes shadowed by the weight of what I'd sacrificed in pursuit of truth. Then came the silent realization, a moment so quiet it almost slipped by unnoticed. It was 3 years ago after my wife passed. She battled cancer for 2 years, her body wasting away in the hospice room that smelled of antiseptic and fading flowers. I'd hold her hand, feeling the fragile bones beneath papery skin, listening to her shallow breaths in the dim light filtering through half-closed blinds. One night, as rain pattered against the window like hesitant fingers, she turned to me, her voice a whisper. "Russell, do you think I'll see you again?" The room fell still, the only sound the distant beep of monitors. I paused, my throat tight, and said, "I don't know, but I hope so. And if there's love at the heart of all this, then yes." In that silence, as her eyes closed in weary acceptance, it hit me. The mystery of belief isn't about pinning down answers. It's about embracing the unknown with open hands. No thunderclap, no revelation, just a quiet settling in my chest, like a long-held breath finally released. From that stillness, I've gathered soft wisdom, spoken not as a sermon, but as a regretful murmur in the dark. If I could whisper to my younger self, I'd say, don't cling so tightly to one path that you blind yourself to the others. Let curiosity guide you, but gently, without tearing down what sustains you. Seek the common threads, the call to love, to help, to humble yourself, woven through every tradition. And remember, doubt isn't the enemy. It's a companion on the journey, sharpening your sight. But oh, how I wish I'd balanced it sooner, without the loneliness that followed. Now as the night deepens around me, the clock ticking softly like a fading heartbeat, I urge you with the weight of my years. Don't wait until the end to question what you hold dear. The cost of certainty can be a life half-lived, echoes of what might have been. What if the truth you seek is scattered among us all, waiting in the stories we share? Let this linger with you in the quiet before it's too late to realize. I know what some of you might be thinking right now as you sit there in your own dimly lit room, perhaps scrolling through your phone late at night, the blue light casting shadows on your face. You're wondering if I'm suggesting that all religions are interchangeable, that picking one is like choosing a flavor of ice cream, irrelevant as long as it tastes good. No, that's not it, not by a long shot. The differences aren't superficial. They're profound, shaped by centuries of human struggle, culture, and revelation. They offer unique lenses to view the divine, or the absence of it, each with its own rituals that ground us in the physical world. The call to prayer echoing at dawn, the lighting of Shabbat candles as twilight falls, the silent meditation where breath becomes a bridge to enlightenment. These variances matter because they reflect our diverse ways of grappling with the inexplicable. Why are we here? What happens after the last breath? How do we endure suffering? Yet, beneath those layers, after poring over texts in dusty libraries, my glasses slipping down my nose, the pages yellowed and crisp under my fingers, I've unearthed a universal core. Every faith, every philosophy I've encountered circles back to essentials that transcend dogma. Treat others with kindness, as if their pain is your own. Extend a hand to the fallen without expecting repayment. Acknowledge your smallness in the grand tapestry of existence. Practice gratitude for the fleeting moments, the warmth of sun on your skin, the laughter of a child, the quiet comfort of a shared meal. These aren't lofty ideals, they're the quiet anchors that kept me afloat during my darkest storms. I've witnessed beauty in so many forms. There was the time I attended a Jewish Seder at a friend's home, the table laden with symbolic foods, bitter herbs for slavery's sting, salt water for tears shed. The storytelling passed down through generations filled the room with a palpable sense of resilience, the candle flames flickering like defiant stars. I felt the weight of history, a continuity that humbled me. Then, in a Buddhist temple on a trip to California, I sat cross-legged on a cushioned floor, the air scented with incense, learning to observe my thoughts like leaves floating down a stream. The stillness there, unbroken by words, revealed a peace I'd chased in vain through noisy prayers. And with Pentecostals in a vibrant service, hands raised, voices soaring in ecstatic song, I experienced joy unbound, a release that shook loose the stiffness from my Presbyterian roots. Each encounter left an imprint, a sensory memory, the taste of matzah, the curl of smoke from joss sticks, the electric energy of collective worship. But I've also stared into the abyss of religion's shadow side, moments that still twist my gut with sorrow. I've seen families fractured, like the young couple I knew whose interfaith marriage sparked boycotts from both sides, their wedding day marred by empty seats and tear-streaked faces. Teenagers, bright-eyed and inquisitive, cast out from homes for voicing doubts, wandering streets with backpacks stuffed with belongings, their trust shattered. Wars ignited under holy banners, land soaked in blood over interpretations of sacred words, prejudice cloaked in piety, slurs hurled at strangers based on their garb or greetings, cruelty justified by selective scriptures, twisting love into hate. Each instance reported in newspapers I'd read over morning coffee, the ink smudging my fingers, broke something in me, because at its heart, no true path endorses such pain, its human frailty corrupting the divine spark. When I hit 50, the crisis deepened. My wife, Eleanor, and I were drowning in bills, the house echoing with arguments over money. I'd taken to the bottle, the sharp burn of whiskey numbing the questions that hounded me. One night, in the garage, surrounded by tools rusting on shelves and the faint smell of oil, I collapsed onto a stool at 2 a.m. The concrete floor was cold through my socks. I prayed, not the scripted pleas of my childhood, but a raw outpouring. If you're out there, whatever you are, I need a sign. I can't carry this alone. No miracle ensued, no celestial light piercing the darkness. But dawn brought my neighbor, Jim, a man I'd nodded to in passing, knocking with an offer for coffee. Over steaming mugs in his kitchen, sunlight slanting through the windows, he shared his own battles with the bottle, pointing me to meetings where strangers became lifelines. Was that divine intervention, serendipity, human decency? The lines blurred, and in that ambiguity I found freedom. The years since have softened my edges. At 75, certainty eludes me more than ever. Heaven, hell, reincarnation. Mere speculations in the face of the vast unknown. The right prayers or Sabbaths, secondary to the act of seeking. I'm at peace with the not knowing, sitting here as the lamp's bulb hums faintly, my breath steady despite the ache in my joints. Awe has replaced dogma, humility, the need to be right. Watching the youth today abandoning organized faith amid scandals and hypocrisy, I empathize. They've endured judgment from pulpits, wounds from those claiming moral high ground. But I gently urge, Don't discard the quest for meaning amid the debris. The big questions about purpose, connection, legacy are innate, pulsing in our veins like blood. I still attend church, the familiar hymns washing over me, but it's for the communion of souls, not salvation's guarantee. Thursdays bring coffee with my Muslim friend, our discussions meandering like rivers. Buddhist readings soothe my evenings. Atheist ethics challenge my assumptions. All pieces of a mosaic, incomplete alone. Eleanor's passing solidified this. In hospice, amid beeps and sterile scents, her question hung in the air like mist. My honest "I hope" was enough. Love bridging the uncertainty. Ultimately, belief's value lies in its fruits. Does it foster compassion or division, service or selfishness? If the former, cherish it. If the latter, reconsider. I'm not long for this world, my days numbered like pages in a book nearing its end. Yet questions persist, surprises await. It's the wondering that keeps the spark alive. So, to you, devout or doubting, certain or searching, your inquiries are sacred, doubts, strengths. The mystery dwarfs us. Respond with wonder. Stay curious. Stay humble. Love fiercely. Help selflessly. Be kind unflinchingly. And keep questioning, for in that pursuit lies our humanity. There's a whole channel here where people my age share what they've learned from living, from struggling, from questioning, from growing. If this meant something to you, I'd love for you to subscribe and turn on notifications. Maybe something we share will help you on your own journey. And hey, if you've got your own story to share, something you think people should hear, go ahead and fill out that form in the description. The next video could be yours. Keep searching, keep questioning, keep being kind.